I appreciate you having me on the webinar. And for a second, I thought you sounded like one of those attorneys I deal with on these probate cases with that disclaimer. But we all understand that you have to do that for obvious reasons. But thank you for that. So I am going to jump right in and start here. I'm going to share my screen. Let me get the technicalities going here. And hopefully you guys can see my screen here in 1 second. All right. Great. Hopefully you guys can see that screen. If you can, someone please wave to me so that I know you got it and I can see that it's there. So we're going to talk about probate training. This would be a great house to acquire via a probate. It's not necessarily one of the ones that you'll see in there, but the cool thing about probate is that you get wonderful opportunities in probate. And the value of it is just amazing. You know, they're saying this is a tidal wave of transfer of wealth in probate, and that's the beauty of it. So wealth is changing hands rapidly. The baby boomers were the richest generation ever in our history, and they're starting to pass away. Their parents are passing away, and we're seeing so much wealth transferring hands. They say baby boomers control about 70% of U.S. wealth. That's amazing. They're the ones we want to deal with. They're the ones that you want as your customers. Here's a beautiful statistic. This came from the California Department of Healthcare Services. A baby boomer dies every 57.9 seconds. So basically every minute. I mean, we've probably been on this webinar 4 or 5 minutes. We've already lost 4 or 5 baby boomers who control that 70% of wealth. And this is the largest transfer of wealth in U.S. history. So it's going to be amazing. It's been amazing for about maybe 7 to 10 years now, and it's going to continue to be amazing that so much property is going to be going through the probate courts and transferring via someone passing away. So here's an interesting piece of the puzzle that started last year. This is something that started in 2018. The iBuyer. How many of you know what the iBuyer is? The iBuyer is the institutional buyer. We have entities like Opendoor, OfferPad, Zillow that have millions of dollars. Last year, Opendoor, I believe, raised about $315 million. I believe it was OfferPad that raised about $475 million. Those numbers may be slightly off, but it's in the hundreds of millions of dollars that these companies have raised solely for the purpose of buying properties. Zillow got their broker's license. Zillow is the #1 website in the world for real estate. It's more widely recognized than Keller Williams, RE/MAX, Realty World, Berkshire Hathaway, Coldwell Banker, Compass, all of these other websites combined. Zillow is where people go for real estate, and Zillow got their broker's license about a little over a year ago. The key is this: as a regular buyer, as an investor, I can't compete with an offer from an institution that has so much money. I'll give you a prime example. I own a home in Las Vegas. I was going to see it, and there was a house on my street, same square footage, couple doors down, that had an Opendoor sign in front of it. It was an Opendoor open house that was going on. This was amazing. I did the numbers and worked the math, and I'll get to the point of the story real quick here. They bought the property. Properties in that area sell for the high 2s, 285 up to 3, really not breaking that 3 mark, but high 2s, 285, 295, 3, the ones that are the square footage that I had and this property was. This property sold for 287. When I went inside, it had brand new carpet and paint everywhere throughout, brand new that vinyl plank wood flooring in the kitchen and in the whole downstairs. The kitchen cabinets had been freshly resurfaced. So it was nice. It was done. Move-in condition, looked great. They bought it for 287 and they had it on the market for 295. I think they ended up dropping the price to 292. My point is they bought it at fair market value. There's not even enough spread between the 295 and the 287 to be able to do the work that was freshly done, the carpet, paint, etc., and new flooring. So they're obviously not making their money from the flip. Most of us investors have to make our money from the flip. They're making their money from the other services that are going on or some other model that they have. Maybe they're just trying to capture market share. I can't, as an investor, afford to invest and not make money. So my point with all this is it makes it very hard to compete. So what's a solution to this problem? As you'll see today, probate is a very particular process. It's very procedural. It requires an additional level of knowledge and skill. When I called that company OfferPad, I found out that for the California markets that they were in at the time, 2 markets in California, Sacramento and Riverside. For the California markets, they were running their operation. I think their corporate office was in Phoenix, Arizona. There's 58 counties in California. There are differences in probate every county. So local expertise and that additional knowledge and skill that it takes to close a probate transaction is a huge barrier to the competition. That's why it makes probate such a great niche, because if you develop the knowledge and skill to be able to close probate transactions, you eliminate a lot of the competition that can't handle what you can handle. It's a phenomenal way to create a niche and build a moat around your business, a moat of protection around your business, so you don't have to worry about the competitors taking your advantage. So it's great. So let's start by defining a couple things. What is probate? Probate is the gathering of assets of a deceased party to pay his or her debts and then distribute the rest to his beneficiaries or his heirs. That's really what it is. Hey, what did John Doe that passed away own? This is everything he owned. What are the debts that have to be paid? Let's pay those debts, and then let's distribute the rest of the property to his heirs. We want to cover a few terms. I'm just going to cover a few quickly. There is a glossary at my website, and I'll show you my website and everything later. But just to give you a few terms so that we're all on the same page, I may say executor, I may say administrator. Those terms are interchangeable. You may hear me say personal representative or estate representative. There can be some differences between a personal representative and executor, but essentially all these terms are referring to the person in charge of the estate. Typically the personal representative or estate representative, we refer to them that way prior to them getting appointed as executor or administrator. So just know these terms are kind of interchangeable. There are some differences, but we don't need to get into those details right now. Now, a will. What is a will? A will is basically a legal document that says this is what happens to my assets when I die. This is what I want to be done when I'm dead. Someone who dies testate means they die leaving a will. If you think of the word testimony, testimony is me saying something, right? So testate comes from the same stem of the word. So it just means someone died stating what they want to happen. If someone dies intestate, that means they died without leaving a will. Okay, and so those are some general terms that we want to be familiar with. Like I said, there's a glossary. You can study that later. It's pretty simple. On that glossary, I cover what trusts are and all that, because it all comes under the same area of law. But I just want to make sure we had these terms. That way, if I'm going over them during this, that it'll make it all clear. So where do we start? Where do we start with this probate process? What do we want to talk about first? We start, oddly enough, we start at the start. Let's start right in the beginning. We start from, I'm either out door knocking and just door knocking an area, trying to find leads, or maybe I'm sending mailers to dilapidated properties, or the best thing would be that I bought some leads and I'm out there sending information to those leads or door knocking for those leads. And I find out someone wants to do something, and either there's no case started or there is a case started, one way or another. The first thing we want to do is have them start a case, obviously. If you're out there door knocking, or let's say you're going after, there's a lot of vacant and abated properties that are probate because the person died. That's why it became vacant and got boarded up and all that kind of stuff. So those you're going to start by, when you contact a person of interest in the estate, meaning a kid, an heir, a spouse, someone that's part of the family, you want to get them to start a probate case so they can start that process. If you're dealing with leads, and I recommend that you deal with the leads, that's the way to get the most. With the leads, you're going to, oftentimes, depending on the type of lead, they will have started a case. So let's go over a couple of those types of leads right now. So first of all, when it comes to leads, buy them from a lead provider. Buy them from probatesdaily.com. Here's why. In the time it takes you to drive down to the county or to the courthouse, in the time it takes you to go learn the process and figure out how do I acquire those leads and what information do I need to gather, and the time it takes you to gather that information, you could have clicked one button and those leads would have been on your computer already. You could have got your email from Probates Daily and you'd have all those leads on your desktop already and not wasting the time. And we all know time is money. So buy them from a provider. I tell my clients that all the time, even in those counties where you can get leads for free from a court website. Usually you get more and better information from a lead provider like Probates Daily. So definitely buy them. That's the number one way to go. Now, I do recommend going down to the courthouse. It's good to at least know what's available there, know how you get documentation, because sometimes you may need forms. It's also a good place to network or meet people. But when it comes to the leads, buy them. It's the best way to go. And I think of leads like this. It's like being a farmer. If I'm a farmer, I'm not going to buy a bunch of seeds and then look at the seeds and go, okay, well, which seed, this seed looks nice. I want to plant that one. And then this other seed, that doesn't look so nice. I'm not going to plant that one. And this other seed is pretty nice. No, that's not what a farmer does. A farmer throws out 10 million seeds and then they go back and they nurture the ones that sprout. It's the same way with your leads. You've got to have more leads than time. You've got to buy a ton of leads. You've got to always buy leads. And then number two, you nurture the ones that respond. When you send out your mailer, the ones that get back to you, those are the ones you nurture and start doing research on the property on and start figuring out if it's a good deal and if you can make this happen and how much money you're going to make. You don't do that beforehand. Once those leads sprout, once those leads respond or have a conversation with you, that's when you want to start nurturing them and putting more effort into them. Hopefully that makes sense, because we don't want to do the work up front. That's not the way to go with this. Now, another thing that's very, very important when it comes to your leads is this. McDonald's. McDonald's is a successful corporation. When you open a McDonald's, you never usually see a McDonald's that's not successful, because they do a lot of research going into it. But do you think day one that I open my McDonald's, that day I have top dollar in sales, month one is my best month ever, and it goes really well? Of course not, because people may see the structure getting built, but then it's built and there's never been a McDonald's in that corner. So I'm not thinking about that McDonald's. It takes me 10 or 20 times to drive by that McDonald's before I realize, oh, that's right, there's a McDonald's here. We don't have to go to the other one that direction. We can go to the one that's right here closer to our house. It takes time for the people to go, oh, there's a McDonald's here. So their business ramps up over time. And then after 3, 6, 9 months, however many months, now the McDonald's is at top production and they're making good money. It's the same way with your leads. Do you think you're going to be highly skilled and perfect at dealing with the leads day one when you buy them? Do you think that when you're working with your leads that you're going to be proficient and understand the process and not miss opportunities day one? Of course not. Sometimes it takes missing some opportunities in order to get better. And I tell people all the time, I have people that are afraid to go contact their leads and say, no, the best thing to do is start jumping in. After you talk to 10 or 20 or 30 people, you'll know what doesn't work and what does. You'll know what you shouldn't have said. You'll know what information that if you had known in the beginning, it would have made it better for you, because you can't learn everything from the start. So just word to the wise, buy leads, buy tons of them, and keep buying them until you get proficient. And then over time, you may learn other ways to generate leads, like developing bird dogs, like working with attorneys and that sort of thing. But you want to have some experience before you go that route. Now, this is very important. This is the 3 phases of probate. And this is what I want you to keep in your mind, because there's a lot of differences county by county, state by state throughout the nation. And I'm going to go over some of that in just a moment. But I want you to understand these 3 phases of probate. First, the first 60 days, basically the case is filed. So if you're knocking on the door or you find a vacant abated property and they say, yeah, we want to sell and grandma died, you know you're starting out here and they haven't even filed the case. So the first thing to do is to get the case filed. If you're working with a probate lead, you know that case is already filed, because that's how it became a probate lead. Probates Daily also has something that I highly recommend. They're pre-probates. This is getting it ahead of time. So these are where they know there's a death and that person owned the property. We don't know if it's actually going to be a probate. We don't know if maybe it's a trust or who knows what, but we know it's likely going to be a situation that needs to be a probate. So whether you're working pre-probate leads or just someone that you're door knocking, you want to make sure the case is filed. If you're working a probate lead, you already know that information. And this is generally what happens in the first 60 days. They file the case, they produce a will, if any, and that's admitted to the probate case, and then the court is going to appoint someone to be in charge, either an administrator or executor. An executor is basically someone that's designated in the will to be in charge. An administrator is someone that the court appoints. But either way, they do the same function. So that's what happens in the first 60 days. That's the appointment phase. The next, and this is based on an assumption that a probate case is going to take 12 months. They don't always take 12 months. Sometimes they're way faster than that, or sometimes they're way longer than that. And they can be faster if all the ducks are in order. They could potentially be faster. It depends on the court and everything. But here's what's important. In most areas, after the appointment phase, they may be able to sell the property. In California, once they're appointed, they have the power to sell the property. There may be a couple other things they have to do in the case before they sell, but they have the power to sell once that appointment is done. So that's a nice thing, is that you don't have to wait a long time before they're ready to actually, transfer the property to you. Okay, and then what happens after that is the administration phase, and we're just going to call that months 2 through 8, assuming a 12-month probate case. So this is where, you got to find all the debts of the decedent. You find all the assets, because, they may know there's a house, but they may not know there was a bank account over here and a stock and bond account over there, etc. Find all the debts and assets of the estate. Pay any debts that have to be done. Sometimes you have to liquidate assets in order to pay some of those debts. What does that mean to us? That means sometimes you have to sell a property in order to pay debts. Sometimes you have to sell a property in order to equalize distributions and that sort of thing. That's beautiful for us, because that means they may be selling a property right away. And then once they do that, they transfer the money. I was talking to another professional in this business, and they were saying how so much nowadays, and this was an auctioneer, but so much nowadays, the children want the money. They don't want the house. They don't want the property. They want the money. So it's like, let's sell this property and get to the money. And then we come to the last 3-month period of this, if we call it a 12-month period, the last months 9 through 12, it's the closing phase where they do the final reporting, final accounting, make sure all the last things are done in the estate, and they close the case. So I want us to keep that in mind, and I'll bring this back up a little bit later. I want us to keep this in mind because this is kind of the phases that a case will go through generally in all states, but there can be differences. So we'll talk about that in just a moment here. All right, so myth number one, hopefully we just debunked this. Myth number one is I have a will and therefore I will not have to go through probate. In most places, if you have a will, you will have to go through probate still. Like I said, there's a lot of variances in different states. For instance, I can think of North Carolina right off the top. Typically in North Carolina, real estate is not considered part of the estate. So you have to know what's going on in your specific area, but generally speaking, if they have a will, they are going to probate. In most states, there's going to be in almost all probate cases, there's going to be some document in the beginning that establishes who's in charge, who's the executor administrator. It's going to be the first thing you want to obtain. It's kind of like a driver's license. When I start driving, I have to have my license. When you start administering a estate, you have to have, in some states, it's going to be called letters of administration or letters testamentary. Other places, it may be called an order for probate. In California, our cases have an order for probate and letters. The order for probate, I don't even see them on cases. They're useless, I mean, in terms of what we do as a closing agent. But the letters are the important document. That tells us who's in charge. Here's an example of what the letters look like. Up at the top here, there would have been the info for the administrator. For the decedent and for the attorney. Up at the top would have been the attorney's info. Here, the estate of that name would have been there. I whited these things out. I'd hate to be doing a webinar and someone says, oh, that was my grandma. So, I white that stuff out so it's not there. So the estate is blank. It says here on number 2, the court appoints, the name was there for the person that was appointed to be in charge of this state. It was whited out here, et cetera. And in California, we need to know whether they had full or limited authority. A lot of other states don't do that. You won't have full or limited authority. In California, we have to know which one they have. So these are the letters. It's a 1-page document, pretty simple. It's pretty self-explanatory if you read it. So when you see these on a case, read it so you can learn a little bit more about what it's all about. But that is the letters. So the main thing I want you to realize is probate is procedural. There's a lot of variation. It's impossible. On this call, on this webinar here, we have people from all over the nation. It would be impossible for me to go through all the details of every state and therefore every county. But I'm going to give you some examples of some of the differences that you can see and how procedures can be different. Probate laws are going to be the same for a whole state, but there can be slight variations within those states because the law gives you the guidelines. But the laws are going to be different state by state, and I'll point out a couple of those differences now. So variation state by state. In North Carolina, they lodge a will. The real property is not considered part of the estate. It automatically passes to the heirs or beneficiaries. So if there's heirs listed in the will, it passes to them. If there's no heirs, it passes based on the intestacy laws. Very different than California. In California, someone dies, you cannot do anything until you probate their estate. You have to probate their estate to get that property to someone else unless they had a trust or something like that. So it's very different to many other states. Whereas in North Carolina, even if you are doing a probate, the real property is not considered part of that probate estate. So, and just to clarify, the estate is considered everything that person owned. So their cash, their jewelry, their personal property, their stock and bond account, their bank account, their real estate, all of that is part of their probate estate. So it creates this big bucket of property that has to pass to the heirs. Well, in North Carolina, they don't consider the real estate going in that bucket. So very interesting difference there. In Florida, homestead laws can supersede even vesting in a trust. So for instance, here in California, if you vest your property in the trust, so if my property is Kevin Sales, trustee of the Kevin Sales Trust, then my trust owns the property basically. And when I die, they distribute that property based on how my trust indicates, okay? In Florida, it's kind of the same. However, they do, on the recording, they show more information about how the trust is going to distribute. But one of our I work for a closing agent, lawyer's title here in California, and one of our sister companies there in Florida had a title claim where they basically had to give someone the entire price they paid for a property because the gentleman who passed away, his trust put his girlfriend in charge and left everything to his girlfriend, but he never got divorced. So he had a wife, and the laws, the homestead laws in Florida say that if you die, your homestead, the property you lived in, goes to your wife. So the girlfriend sells the property via the trust, new buyer buys it, the wife later comes in and says, hey, that should have been my property. So the title company had to come in and make the wife whole and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, so it's interesting that the homestead laws there supersede what you may have on title. So it's important to know these types of things in your state. And there's no way I could go over all 50 states with all the differences. So those are some examples I wanted to share with you about state by state differences. Variations also happen county by county. I'll give you a couple examples here in California. Generally speaking, in Los Angeles County, listings, if you're a real estate agent on this call, listings are at 5%, generally speaking. In Orange County, which is the county immediately adjacent to LA to the south, in Orange County, they do 6% listings all the time. So that's something that's not written in law. It's a guideline that they have in each county. It's not written in law, so it can vary state by state, which is a good thing, because that local expertise, again, this is one of the things that makes the barrier to all the people outside of your area. This is one of the things that if I live in the Panhandle in Florida, may make it more challenging for me to come start grabbing market share in Dade County or Miami, because the difference is county by county. I may not know those things, and I could have an issue. So it's important that you recognize those things, and hopefully this is all sinking in. Hopefully you guys are realizing how these variations are going to be an advantage to you. I'll cover a little bit more of that in just a moment, but hopefully you guys are realizing that. So another difference, the probate guideline in California for court confirmation sales. A lot of other states don't have court confirmation sales, but we do. I understand from talking to folks outside of California, we have some of the most complicated probate here in California. But the guideline is a 10% deposit, meaning the buyer has to put up a 10% deposit for that sale. In LA County, we can be a little bit flexible because, when it's a $2 million house, you don't have to put up $200,000 for us to know you're serious. If you put up 75 grand or 100 grand, we know you're serious, and that's more than enough money to cover costs if you bail out on the transaction. So, so they're a little bit more flexible. However, San Bernardino County is much more rigid, and San Bernardino County is a lower price county, so I think that's why they stick to that 10% guideline. So very interesting. And speaking of lower price counties, I was talking earlier about the iBuyer and that competition coming in. If you live in an area, I live in Los Angeles County. In Los Angeles County, the median price is $565,000. I mean, if you're buying a house for $450,000, it's an entry level, either a bad neighborhood or it's an entry level type. It's probably far this 900 square foot or something like that. So that's kind of what we deal with here. But the key, I'm getting a message here that my internet connection is unstable. So hopefully you guys can still hear me. But what I wanted to point out is with those iBuyers, when you look at the markets that they're in right now, generally speaking, the markets that they're in the beginning are the lower price markets. They're not in LA County, but they are in Riverside County, which is a county east of Los Angeles where the median price is much lower. Why do I bring that up? If you're in an area of the nation where prices are lower, if it's a populated area that these iBuyers are going to be going to, if you're near a major city, then all the more reason for you to understand this probate niche, all the more reason for you to get this knowledge so that you can close these transactions and have the additional knowledge and skill that's required to be able to work this niche. So if you guys are getting this information, if this is sinking in, if this is making sense, and most importantly, if this is something that you think will help your business, raise your hand. I think there's a way on here to wave at me or raise a hand. Do that for me so I can see and get some feedback that you guys are hearing me and getting this information. Okay, good. I see a couple hands waving there. Thank you guys for that. Okay, excellent. But keep them coming. If you guys are getting this, do that. There are variations. Okay, there are variations case by case even courtroom by courtroom. Here in California, I won't say the name, but there's a judge that many of us know in Los Angeles County, know this judge's name because this judge is a stickler and doesn't always understand the issues at hand, but will hold to certain letters of the law. So a lot of attorneys don't like when it's in that judge's courtroom and that sort of thing. So you have that. You have some judges that are more strict, some that are more lenient. Things are done case by case. So some attorneys want, for instance, some attorneys want to review all papers before their client signs anything. And you'll have that. I need to see everything. Before they sign anything, I need to see it. So starting out, some people ask me this all the time. Hey, Kevin, so I got these leads and I'm getting ready to start. So should I start by contacting the attorney? I would say no. Excuse me. I've had numerous situations where I was coaching an investor or coaching a real estate agent, and the attorney is trying to get their own agent in there. I had one where the investor bought this property. They talked to the family. Family wanted to sell it to them for numerous reasons I'm not going to get into. But the attorney, because they have to do this because it's their job, the attorney was advising the party, the seller, to put the property on the market, list it, and sell it. The attorney knows they don't have to take my advice, but I'm advising them to do this. And the seller did not take their advice. The seller did not put it on the market. They sold it privately to the investor that I was coaching through this process. The point with all of this is the attorneys have things they want to do. When you are working with someone and you have that willing seller, I always say, sign your contract. If you're a real estate agent, sign your listing agreement. If you're an investor, sign your contract to buy that property, and then communicate with the attorney. Because there's that saying, it's better to beg for forgiveness than it is to ask for permission. Because if you go talk to them, if you have a signed contract, you have a signed contract. You've got ink on paper. If you don't yet, the attorney might say, well, we want to wait, or we want to do this, or we're not quite ready, or we want to put it on the market. You don't want to deal with all that. It's better to say, hey, we signed a contract. I figured you'd probably want to review it. I'm sending this over to you. That way they know, hey, we've already committed. So that's a recommendation. Hopefully you guys are writing that down and keeping that note. It's very important. All right. So another thing, in California, most attorneys want a deposit check. When we're doing a court confirmation sale, most of the attorneys want the deposit check paid to the estate. Some of them will say, pay the check to the escrow. And there's a few, it's rare, it's not very common, but there are some. I've closed some transactions where the attorney required that the deposit check go in their trust account. So again, these are variations. You could have the same situation, but different things going on because variations case by case based on the details. All right, here's a couple things that are important. The court always wants what's in the best interest for the estate, always. That is what's going to go on. So sometimes I'm dealing with an investor, and we're trying to work out some challenges on a deal, and we're trying to get to the bottom line. And I have to, it's hard, me, because I'm coaching them, I'm kind of independent. I want them to get the deal, of course, but I'm kind of independent. But the individual, sometimes they're so fixed on, I want this deal because I'm going to make money, and they're not thinking about what everybody else involved wants. You should always think about, how can I make this beneficial to the seller? How can I make this beneficial to the attorney or to the estate or to the other people involved? If you think that way, you're going to be able to get through problems more, because the court, the attorneys, the seller, they're all going to do what's in the best interest of the estate. It's important you know that. You've heard of that saying, what's in it for me, WIIFM, what's in it for me? Well, this is kind of WIIFE, what's in it for the estate. Always keep that in mind. You're going to get more transactions and be able to close more if you keep that in mind. It's funny because I just spelled wife. So for all of you women on the call, there you go. This is for the wife. That's what's important. What's in it for the estate? Let's remember that. All right, we got to have a little fun while we do these types of things, right? We got to have a little fun in this business. Leads are so vitally important. When it comes to the leads with Probate Daily, you should get the pre-probate leads. When you're dealing with the pre-probate leads, this is key. This is paramount. I mean, I have a whole book I've written on dealing with the estate representative, right? It's called Marketing to Estate Representatives. It's a whole book. I deal with all the different ways to stand out. But if there's one thing that I could tell you, it's offer to help them pay for their probate. I have case after case, file after file. One we're trying to put together this week, the mother that passed away, she had 3 kids, one of them's dead, one of them has dementia, and the one that's around that can do this, we're trying to get this going. And he said his mom died eight years ago or something, and he's living in the property. They've never done, he wants to move. The property's here in California, he wants to sell it and move to Tennessee. The reason he hasn't started a probate. He doesn't have a nickel to his name. He can't get things started. So this investor, when I was coaching them on a few things, he goes, Kevin, what you just told me can work. I'm going to reach out to him. And now they're supposed to have an appointment this week with the attorney. We're showing them how we're going to help them finance the cost of the probate, and we're going to get a deal in place if everything falls through, if everything goes through. So the key with the pre-probates is offer to help them pay for the probate. It's paramount. So many people, or any other estate, if you're outdoor knocking on vacant abated properties, or if you're knocking doors and someone says, yeah, we want to sell, but my dad just passed away. If you offer them help pay for the probate, that's usually the biggest barrier to them starting the process. Okay, next, you've got to buy the probate leads from Probates Daily as well. Again, we are like farmers. Excuse me, I had to take a drink of water there. We are like farmers. We want 10,000 seeds. If the farmer wants 100 plants, he is not going to plant 100 seeds because he knows every seed is not going to sprout. He's going to plant 1,000 or 10,000 or 1,000,000 or however many to get those 100 plants. We got to do the same thing. So you should be getting the pre-probate leads and the probate leads. With the probate leads, find out what their needs are. I work with a good buddy. He's become a good buddy of mine. He's a client of mine. I met him 2 years ago when he got in the business. Not even 2 years, I think. Actually, this May will either be 2 or 3 years. I think it's 2 years this May. Anyway, the point is this. He's one of the top producers in the real estate office he works in. He buys a ton of properties and invests in tons of them. He also lists a bunch of them. But he built his business solely. He would meet people at Target, at the coffee shop. He would meet people anywhere. And next thing you know, he's getting a listing appointment from it. And all he did was he found out from people, what is it you're looking to do? When you have these properties, people say, I need a script and all that. You do. And I have a whole book on scripts too. But the basic script, if I could give you one script, this is what I would say. Hey, John Doe, I see that you're the administrator or you're in charge of the estate for Mr. Smith who passed away. I just have one question. What are your plans with the property? And you could say that a bunch of different ways. What do you plan to do with the property? Is the property for sale? Is the property going to be for sale? But find out what they want to accomplish. What is it that you want to accomplish? I see that you're going to be starting a probate. I see that you need to start a probate, whatever the case may be. What are your plans? What are your goals with this situation? What do you want to get out of this situation? The situation I was just telling you about with the gentleman who wants to move to Tennessee, that investor had been working with him. Again, this barrier was there. The investor had been working with him, and he found out the guy wants to sell the property and move to Tennessee. Once you find out what their needs are and what they want to do, this is the key. You take whatever they said and you rephrase it back to them. So I say, so John Doe, if I can fill in the blank with whatever they say. So John Doe, if I can help you sell that property, get your share of the estate and move to Tennessee, would you be willing to work with me? That's an automatic yes, because there's no way they can. You're saying, if I can help you reach your goal, will you work with me? How can they say no to that? It's the thing they said they wanted to do. So whatever they say, you just refer that back to them. If I can help you do X, would you be willing to work with me? It's the best close ever. Sales training company teaches you to test close, and when you test close in that way, it helps them understand that you're aligned with their goals. Of course you want to buy the property. Of course you're only going to buy it if it's a deal. That goes without saying. But the thing is, you make getting that property at a deal aligns with them oftentimes. So many of the homes in probate are dilapidated properties. They're in disrepair. Even the nice ones, they're in great shape, but they were updated in the 60s. So no matter what, there's going to be work that has to be done a large portion of the time. And that's where your profit margin comes in, because that house is not going to sell for fair market value. So if you can help them achieve their goals, then you can make a deal happen and get to your goal. There's a thing called the Uniform Probate Code. The intention of this was to have one probate code that all the states use, so that if I'm doing probate in California or I'm doing probate in New York, I know what I'm doing. It's the same. Didn't quite work out like that. I think this came out in like the 60s, like 1969, something like that. According to Wikipedia, there's about 16 states that have adopted it. I put 16-ish for a reason I'll show you in just a moment. Those states are these on the screen. So if you're in one of these states, you could look up the Uniform Probate Code, and that's kind of the code in your area. Now, to do this business, you do not need to know the whole probate code. To do this business, you do not need to become a lawyer. The whole purpose of this webinar is not to make you become a lawyer. It's to give you some background so you understand the general parts of the process, and then allow you to be able to start going after those leads and targeting those leads to be able to get the transactions. When you do 1 or 2 transactions, any details in your specific area will become apparent, and it'll make it a lot easier for you. But these are the areas that have the Uniform Probate Code. And here's an interesting thing. The reason it's 16-ish is because Florida considers themselves as having adopted the Uniform Probate Code. But there's this case where a Michigan attorney was filing some stuff on a Florida probate, and the attorney missed a deadline on a $3.7 million claim filing. Because he missed that deadline, he was not able to get that $3.7 million paid out, and lost. And the Florida appellate court said, we can't change our probate, our code in Florida. We can't change Florida law for every attorney in another state who's not going to know what they're doing on our cases. So it just tells you the code is for the local area. If you're working out of area, there's some things you may have to learn. Again, this is one of those barriers to other people competing in your niche. So when you become an expert in your area, when you get that information for your area, it's going to help you out immensely. This is big. You got to imagine, at a $3.7 million claim, they had high-priced attorneys fighting this, and they did not win. So many states have adopted some portion of the Uniform Probate Code, but not the whole thing. Generally speaking, an executor or administrator, the person in charge of the state, is going to have to do a few things. They're going to, oftentimes they can sell on their own, or they can sell with court approval or court stamp or sign off in some way. In California, we do the confirmation hearing, which is like an auction in the court, in the actual courtroom. It's really crazy. But in other states, they may not have. They may just have to get an approval or some sort of order. Typically, the administrator executor has requirements to publish the fact that there's a probate being done and to publish the fact that there's a sale being done. Some people like say, oh, that's where I get my probate leads, is from the newspaper when they publish them. But you're a little behind the gun. They go file the case first and then they publish it. It's not immediate. So by buying your leads from Probates Daily, you're going to get the leads earlier than the people that are buying them from the newspaper. But it's important to know that typically they have to publish, because sometimes you cannot sell the property until the publication has happened. Again, I highly recommend on your cases that you have an attorney be on the case. If you have control, or if you can make a recommendation, advise them to get legal advice and to have an attorney, because it'll make your process so much simpler. Probate is very procedural, and missing certain little procedures can delay or cause a problem for your sale. So if they're following the procedures, it makes it a lot better. And if they have an attorney, that's the best way for them to follow the procedures. The administrator executor will let the attorney know once they have an accepted offer. So, if you're helping this person or they don't know what to do, when you sign that contract with them, tell them, hey, let's send this to the attorney so he knows we got an escrow going, or we're getting ready to start an escrow. They got to be careful if they're attempting to wholesale. And actually, this is really for you, the investors. Be careful for attempting to wholesale. If there's any court approval, if they can sell the property in a private sale, no problem. If you're in North Carolina where the real estate is not even part of the estate, the heirs can just do it, not going to be a problem. But if this is something where there's going to require court approval or court supervision of the sale, be very, very cautious with wholesaling. You may not be able to wholesale the property. In California, the court confirmation sales, I tell people all the time, don't wholesale them. You can't do it. It's like really threading a needle, and it's very hard. So just don't do it. Okay. Last one on this page is that use all the proper documentation for your area. So if you're a real estate agent, usually your ZIP forms or your local association realtors will have probate-specific documents for that area. If you're an investor, you may have a contract that an attorney approved. If not, hopefully you got some legal advice on creating that contract. Use the appropriate documentation. Sometimes attorneys, I see this often here in California, if an offer is not written on the California Association of Realtors contract, they'll say, send me a CAR contract. So it causes challenges sometimes for investors, but you see that sometimes. So that's good for those of you who are real estate agents. But for those of you investors using your own contract, you just may be able to, may need to know about that. Doesn't mean you can't use your contract, but some of the attorneys might be particular about that. All right, so myth number 2. Hopefully I debunked the fact that probate is so complicated, or that it's a long time and ties your money up. It brings me right back to the 3 phases. For most estates around that 60-day period, or the appointment phase, for most of them, that's when you can actually complete a sale around that time period. So, if you're catching them right in the beginning, like they just filed the case yesterday, you may have to wait 6 weeks or so before you can actually complete the sale, or before you can actually enter a contract. But sometimes with the leads, you might be calling on leads that have had their letters for a while, so they can already sell the property to you. I'm sorry, I'm starting to stutter because I'm thinking about something very important that, you market to your leads. Just because you buy leads in February and you market to them doesn't mean you stop marketing then. In July, I might have a mailer that goes out to them again, because sometimes it takes people time to process information or time to think, or in the beginning, they're trying to keep the property, and then down the road, they realize they have to sell it. So you don't want to just market to them one time. I always say, don't be a one-hit wonder. You want to market to them in the beginning. I always say early and often, in the beginning, and continue to market to them over the course of these phases that they're going through. Sometimes they close the case and they want to sell it. So I have a great resource for you that's completely free. If you go to probaterealestateSales101.com, I'll put that on the screen in just a moment, the probate cheat sheet. It's free to download. Go to the resources page. This gives you some questions and items to ask in the beginning. Have they filed a case? Do they have letters? Those kinds of questions in the beginning. So, because when I'm coaching people all the time, they say, hey, Kevin, I got this new probate. Can you help me out? They call me. They don't really have any real information that I need. They have to go back and call the potential client again and ask them the questions. Then they come back to me and bring me the information. Then I tell them what the next step is. You don't want all that going back and forth. If you could have the questions to get answered right in the beginning and get those questions answered, and then call your mentor or coach or reach out to me, and then I can kind of help you say, okay, yeah, next step, go get that contract signed and blah, blah, blah. So, so it helps you a lot. So the cheat sheet. One thing I want us to understand, probate is an umbrella. It's not just probate court sales. It's all deceased party sales. So for instance, in North Carolina, the gentleman dies. The house is not considered part of the estate, so it doesn't go through probate. That's still under this umbrella because you're dealing with the heirs and in a similar situation. Trust sales in California, trust sales don't go through the court. It's still under this umbrella. When you become that expert in probate, when you start marketing yourself this way, when people start knowing who you are as a probate expert, you'll get referrals. Those of you who are investors, when you start becoming known in the investment circles and you're going to the RIAs and the real estate investment clubs and all that, and people know you do probate, what will happen is other investors will have a deal that they want, and they're talking to the son, and they found out the parent died, and they want to sell this property, but they don't know what to do. They'll call you. Now you just had a deal fall into your lap because you're an expert in this area. So it's an umbrella that could be regular sales that are a lot easier, or it could be probates that have a little more procedures to them. Don't forget the fact that a baby boomer dies every 57.9 seconds. There is so much probate business in this industry. So I have a few resources. My website is probaterealestateSales101.com. That's the number, 800-299-0709. For the next few days, at least, I'll have that forwarded to my cell phone so you can reach me pretty easily. If I don't answer, leave me a message and I will call you back. I get telemarketers from all over the nation, so do leave me a message. That way I know it's not I don't call back the telemarketers that don't leave a message. So leave me a message and I'll call you back. There's a glossary on the resources page. The probate cheat sheet is also on the on the resources page, so go get that. The products page, I'm going through a little technical difficulties right now. They're doing a rework that I think is not going to be done until later this week on my shopping cart. So everything looks like it might work, but it might not. So if you want a product, you can email me, and my email is just kevin@probaterealestateSales101.com. I would recommend you email me. That way I can make sure the process goes right while I'm doing this this back office stuff. I've been having a lot of problems with my shopping cart lately, and I may actually be switching providers, so I don't know how long this is going to go on. But anyway, we can do it that way easier, and you pay online with a Square. So I have a tool that's great to help you. I'm giving a deal because of this call, because of this webinar with Probates Daily. It's my Probate PRAS 101 system. It's everything that I've written. My 26 years in this business, my sales experience, all my sales training, all my background as a sales manager and as a coach, and all the information I know on marketing to probate is all in this manual. I'm going to cover a couple things. You get a ton of information. This is a partial list of what comes with my system, but I'm going to go over just a few, about 4 or 5 of them. The training course. It is this workshop we just did on steroids. I believe it's 170 pages, detailed information, case studies, a lot of examples of things that I've done. I go into information that's beyond probate, like details on trust, like fast types of probate situations that can happen where there's procedures that may be in your state where you can do a faster situation than probate. I also go into detail on powers of attorney and that sort of stuff. So phenomenal manual. Everything I got on probate is right in there. Creating rapport with attorneys. There's so many things, this and the next guide, there's so many things that people want to do marketing-wise that when it comes to dealing with attorneys or dealing with probate, sometimes you got to do things that are a little bit counterintuitive. And So this is really advanced training on how to market yourself. I don't recommend people market themselves to the attorneys until they get a few transactions under their belt, because attorneys will smell it if you're a newbie right off the bat. But it's for the more advanced, for you to have ways to stand out with the attorney, and it's not usually what people think. Real estate agents all the time have to rework their material after they learn some of the things in there so that they can get the attorneys to call them back or to want to meet with them. Marketing to Estate Representatives, it's another book that I wrote, and this one is all about how to get that estate representative to work with you. You're not going to be maybe where you are in the United States, you might be the only person. If you're in California, if you're in LA County, if you're in, a highly populated area, you're not going to be the only person marketing to them. Hopefully you'll be the most knowledgeable person, and it probably won't be a ton of other people, but we've always got to work as though we're in competition. This teaches you how to get around the competition and beat them with a better scenario. So all of these products sell on their own. I'm giving you a package deal for all of this today. I'll tell you that in just a second. This is the best thing ever. My quick start guide. It's a written guide and an audio. I'm the type of guy that when I buy a new electronic equipment or a TV, I read the quick start guide. I never go back and read the manual. Once I get it set up, I never work with it again. And for years, I might be sitting there going, wow, I don't know how to do this or how to do that on the TV because I never read the guide. But the quick start guide got me up and running right away. I love this product. I think it's worth $1,000 by itself because it teaches you right away, right now, how to be up and running in business today, immediately. And I'm not talking about, okay, I'm ready for business. No, I'm talking about how to have leads and be talking to people right now, right away. That's what the Quick Start Guide is all about. And I created an audio for it as well, just because I wanted you to be able to listen to that while you're in the car or whatever. And I'm adding this in. I don't normally offer this all the time. From time to time, I'll do it. And right now is one of those times, a jumpstart call with me. I will do once you buy the material, once you digest it and look at everything, I will do a one-on-one call with you to help you get jump started. I recently did this with a person. She's here in California locally. And she said, well, can we just meet in person rather than meeting, on the phone? And we did. We met in person. I spent over an hour with her, helping her get things. And she took so many notes. She said, I wish I would have met you thousands of dollars ago between the other coaches I've paid for and months ago before I wasted all this time. And so the good thing is for me, I get pleasure out of doing this because what I want you to have the material in your hands so you can get business. I get pleasure out of the people that call me and say, hey, Kevin, I did what you were telling me. I got the deal. We're going under contract. Hey, Kevin, we just closed our first deal. Hey, Kevin, we did what you talked about and we got this deal and we have another appointment. I love that. That's why I'm in this business. So if you were to add up all the products in my system, it's about $2,800 worth of products. On the website, that's offered for $1,500 because I offer it at a great deal. But for those of you who are on this webinar, you can get the whole system for $997. It's only going to be via invoice. There's not going to be a product code or anything. So here's what you do. Email me and say, Kevin, I want your system. And I will send you an invoice for this product. Any product on my website that if you want to buy, I'll give you a discount on them. Maybe I'll give you 10 or 20% based on being on this webinar. But I'll do it. I'll give 20% on any product on there. But the system is a third off, $997. And I'll send you an invoice. You pay that invoice, and then you'll get the products emailed to you right after that. I'll do that manually for you. This is my email, kevin@kevinsales.com. All you need to email me is, I want your system at $500 off. Give me your full name and your mobile number in case I have to call you in case something doesn't go through. But do that, and then you'll get that product for $500 off. I hope this has been beneficial to you. Here's my contact information. We're going to take a few minutes for Q&A. I see that there are some questions there. So Joe, maybe if you can come back on and read those questions, we can do a quick Q&A for those of you who want to ask a few questions. But this is my info, and let's see if I can get into this Q&A here. Joe, you want to read the ones that you've looked through?
Yes. I have a few questions here. Franklin has a question about where can I get the information about laws? I assume it means the probate laws.
Oh, probate laws for your specific state. So number one is if you talk with an attorney, you'll understand more. You may find an attorney that can help you go through that process or give you the procedural part in there. That would be the best recommendation. The thing is, most attorneys are not going to just give you their time. So you may have to do that down the road. The other thing you can do is Google. Usually you will find some good official sites that will tell you information about the procedures. And what I would do is I wouldn't spend a lot of time, maybe an hour, hour and a half. Usually a law firm will have a blog where they go over certain procedures in the general process. Now, the probate code, I don't have it on my desk right here. I have it on my bookshelf, but I have the probate code for California. It's a book. You're not going to need that much, but most states will have that online. You can Google, like if you're in Montana, you can Google Montana probate code, and you'll probably find an official government website that has the whole code in it. To read that, I mean, read that if you want to go to sleep at night. I don't think it's necessary because you don't need that level of detail. Again, we're just here to buy the property, or we're just here to list the property. You don't need that level of detail.
Okay, thank you. Next one is actually more of a comment. Sean Pham says, great info, and I love your book. And it's an excellent book. Any of those that have not picked it up, please pick it up. Check it out on Amazon, Probate Real Estate Sales 101. It's an excellent resource for anyone that has any information or looking for information about probate real estate. The next question is, what about pre-probate versus just probate?
So I hope that I covered that during the webinar. Maybe that was a question early on, but pre-probates are someone that died and we know they owned a home. And again, this is going to fall under that umbrella I was talking about. It could end up being a trust sale, could end up being a probate sale, could end up being that the joint tenant is going to sell it. I mean, who knows what it's going to be, but the death is what causes the sale in probate cases and non-probate cases, not so much whether or not it's actually an official probate case. So the pre-probates are going to be a death record that could end up being a probate sale, could end up being a great source of leads for you. The probate leads are the ones that they become a lead because someone filed a probate.
Okay. Thank you. Next question is from Michelle. The included coaching in your program, how long is that for?
The included coaching. So what I'm offering with my system is one coaching call. I would work with you if you really needed an additional call. I give you what you need in that one, but if you really need a little bit more, we could work on that. I do offer coaching. My coaching is $3,000. That's 6 calls. It's usually 1 call every 2 weeks. Coaching is available. I don't have a lot of capacity to coach a lot of folks at the same time, and I only have about 1 or 2 slots open. So you can email me if you're interested in that. I also am planning on putting together, I'm trying to work out the scheduling for this, but putting together a group coaching that will be no more than 6 participants. So it'll be 3 to 6 participants. It'll be probably around $500 a month. You will get 3 group calls where all the folks are on the call. It'll be a curriculum that I teach on that call with a short amount for question and answer at the end. And then once a month, you would have your own private 30-minute call. So the group coaching is coming. So stay tuned on your email. I'll get your email addresses from Joe and I'll send you info about that when it comes out. But when you see an email about group coaching coming, raise your hand because that'll probably go really quick.
Okay. And one last question from Greg. What are the differences between dealing with a trust versus probate?
That's a very good question. So if the trust is properly vested in title, typically in most areas, they do not have to go through court procedures. For instance, in California, they provide a full copy of the trust. They sign a document called a trust cert saying, we gave you a full copy of the trust and there's no other parts that we're hiding. And then basically they're done. They're ready to go. They can sell right away. No court time, no waiting time, no none of that. Now, there are trust administration responsibilities that the trustee has, but in terms of the sale for you as a buyer or you as a real estate agent, there's really nothing more that they have to do. So that's what's really cool about that. Now, with a probate, typically they are going to be going to court and going through a court procedure, with some exceptions, throughout the nation. Hey, Joe, there's a couple that I think I can answer really cool that I see on the screen here. I hope you don't mind if I just go through those real quick. So one of them said, can you wholesale in Florida? I mean, you can wholesale anywhere. The main thing is to realize, don't try to wholesale if there's court procedures that are required. Are you marketing by mailers or, I'm sorry, let me go back to that wholesaling. If there's court supervision, you may have to be careful because once the court approves a transaction, they're approving a buyer, and you don't want to try to wholesale after that point. Trying to be more clear. Okay, Michelle says, are you marketing only by mailers or are there phone numbers? Many people market by mail, and I have some people that I have a guy, all he does is phone calling. He pays a virtual assistant to take his leads, do some searches on some other systems to find phone numbers. There's systems out there. There's one called Real Cloud 360. Real Cloud 360. That's a new one. RealCloud360.com is their website. Intellius is out there. Spokeo is out there. RealCloud360 is a really good one, and another really good one is TLO. TLO comes from the company that makes LexisNexis. But I think, like, if you tell them you're marketing, I know TLO won't give you an account. You have to be using it for whatever purposes. But anyway, I have clients that have these systems, and they're able to scrub and get phone numbers that way. So very important that you may have to do some work to track down the phone numbers. Door knocking is always the best when it comes to probate. Door knock the house, door knock the area, door knock the petitioner or estate representative's house if you have their address, which you should. So that's a few that I thought I could answer real quick. Someone says it's important to have a real estate license. That's completely up to you as an investor. Some investors don't want a license because they want to advertise that you don't have to have a real estate. You don't have to pay commissions. But if you're going to be listing, obviously, then it's good to have a license. I always say it's good to have an investor partnered with an agent. If you're an investor, a real estate agent should be your best friend. It's good to have an investor partnered with an agent because the deal maybe that you're not going to get, you can refer to the agent, and maybe you work out some sort of deal where they share or help with some revenue. So I want to make sure I answered those. I don't want this to go too long. So here's what we'll do. There's a way for me to answer these questions. And I think you can pull these questions out and maybe do it via email, but I'll make sure we get the answers to all of these questions right away. And then you can either send them out via email or you can, or I'll answer them right here on this system, and I think it will send them to them. One way or another, we'll make sure you get those answers. There's one here real quick says, what's the web address for the probate leads? It's probates, with an S, probatesdaily.com. There, you scroll down, there's a contact form, I think. You put in your information, put that code KS101. That way you get the discount with them. Joe, you want to close out?
Yeah, I'm going to close out. And going back to that discount for the promo code KS101, that is 30% discount through Friday night, and that is off our list price. So give us a call. That's our phone number, area code 813-563-0005, extension 1, or email us at info@foreclosuresdaily.com, or just visit our website, probatesdaily.com or foreclosuresdaily.com. And we will be able to offer you that discount and also answer any more information that you might have on any of our other leads that we provide nationwide. So if there's no other questions, that concludes today's broadcast for the webinar. I really appreciate all your help, Kevin, and attending and putting on another great webinar. And any questions, please email us or call us, and we'll be able to help you out. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, Joe.